And Sahasrasra Sir Sapi Tato Garut Mata Madhorvanam Vidya Didrikshaya Gata. And this verse says, the great sage Maitreya told Vidura, when the demigods were thus reassured by the and after offering their obeisances, they returned to their heavenly planets. Then the Lord, who is non-different from the Sahasra Sirsa incarnation, got on the back of Garuda, who carried him to the Madhuvana forest to see his servant Dhruva. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The word Sahasra Sirsa refers to the personality of Godhead known as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Although the Lord appeared as Shirodakshaya Vishnu, he has been described here as Sahasra Sirsa Vishnu because he is non-different from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. According to Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Bhagavatamrita, the Sahasra Sirsa personality of Godhead who appeared at that time was the incarnation known as Vrishni Garbha. He created the planet known as Dhruvaloka for the inhabitation of Dhruva Maharaja. Oh, that's nice. And he gave Dhruva Maharaja a whole planet. Text 2. The form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and in which Dhruva Maharaja, in his mature yogic process, was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden disappeared. Thus, Dhruva was perturbed and his meditation broke. But as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present, just as he had been seeing the Lord in his heart. Oh, that's very nice. Mm-hmm. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Because of his mature position in yogic meditation, Dhruva Maharaja was constantly observing the form of the personality of Godhead within his heart. Well, we should all hope to have that same possibility. But all of a sudden, when the Supreme Personality disappeared from his heart, he thought that he had lost him. Dhruva Maharaj was perturbed, but upon opening his eyes and breaking his meditation, he saw the same form of the Lord before him. In the Brahma Samhita 538, it is said, Pramanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, a saintly person who has developed love of Godhead by devotional service always sees the Lord's transcendental form of Shyam Sundara. This Shyam Sundara form of the Lord within the heart of a devotee is not imaginary. When a devotee becomes mature in his prosecution of devotional service, he sees face to face the same Shyama Sundara. The same Shyam Sundara he has thought of during the entire course of his devotional service. Since the Supreme Lord is absolute, the form within the heart of a devotee, the form in the temple, and the original form in Vaikuntha, Vrindavana, Dhamma, are all the same and they are non-different from one another. Wow. Text 3. When Dhruva Maharaja saw his Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of Godhead. Dhruva Maharaja, in ecstasy, looked upon the Lord as if he were drinking the Lord with his eyes. Wow, that's a very wonderful statement. Kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth and embracing the Lord with his arms. Harivilas. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Naturally, when Dhruva Maharaj personally saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, he was very much agitated in awe and respect, and it appeared as if he were drinking the entire body of the Lord with his eyes. The devotee's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so intense that he wants to kiss the lotus feet of the Lord constantly, and he wants to touch the tips of the toes of the Lord and constantly embrace his lotus feet. All these features of Dhruva Maharaja's bodily expression indicate that upon seeing the Lord face to face, he developed the 8 kinds of transcendental ecstasy in his body. Haribol. Text 4. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy, he wanted to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language, but because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, could understand Dhruva Maharaj's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched his conch shell to the forehead of Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands. Now, if Krishna touches your forehead with his conch shell, a lot of good things happen. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Every devotee wants to chant the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Devotees are always interested in hearing about the Lord's transcendental qualities, and they are always eager to glorify these qualities. But sometimes they feel inconvenienced by humbleness. The Lord, the personality of Godhead being situated in everyone's heart, specifically gives a devotee intelligence to describe him. It is therefore understood that when a devotee writes or speaks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his words are dictated by the Lord from within. Wow. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter. To those who constantly engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord from within dictates what to do next in order to serve him. When Dhruva Maharaja felt hesitant, not knowing how to describe the Lord for want of sufficient experience, the Lord, out of his causeless mercy, touched his conch shell to Dhruva's forehead, and he was transcendentally inspired. This transcendental inspiration is called Brahma Maya, because when one is thus inspired, the sound he produces exactly corresponds to the sound vibration of the Vedas. This is not the ordinary sound vibration of this material world. Therefore, the sound vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra, although presented in the ordinary alphabet, should not be taken as mundane or material. Haribol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. At that time, Dhruva Maharaja became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusion and understood the absolute truth. His relationship with all living entities and his relationship with all living entities, in accordance with the line of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread. Dhruva, who in the future would receive a planet which would never be annihilated, even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. There are very many important items to be considered in this verse. First of all, the relationship between the absolute truth and the relative material and spiritual energies is here understood by a student who has complete knowledge of the Vedic literature. Dhruva Maharaja never went to any school or academic teacher to learn the Vedic conclusion, but because of his devotional service to the Lord, as soon as the Lord appeared and touched his forehead with his conch shell, automatically the entire Vedic conclusion was revealed to him. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Yes, you don't have to go to mundane schools. It's all nonsense. So automatically the entire Vedic conclusion was revealed to him. That is the process of understanding Vedic literature. One cannot understand it simply by academic learning. That's the truth. The Vedas indicate that only to one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, as well as in the spiritual master, is the Vedic conclusion revealed. The example of Dhruva Maharaj is that he engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord according to the order of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. As a result of his rendering such devotional service with great determination and austerity, the personality of Godhead personally manifested himself before him. Dhruva was only a child. He wanted to offer nice prayers to the Lord, but because he lacked sufficient knowledge, he hesitated. But by the mercy of the Lord, as soon as the Lord's conch shell touched his forehead, he became completely aware of the Vedic conclusion. That conclusion is based on proper understanding of the difference between Jiva and Paramatma, the individual soul, and the super soul. The individual soul is forever a servant of the super soul, and therefore in his relationship with the super soul, and therefore in his relationship with the super soul is also is to offer service. That is called bhakti yoga or bhakti bhava. Dhruva Maharaj offered his prayers to the Lord not in the way of the impersonalist philosophers, but as a devotee. Therefore, it is clearly said here, bhakti bhava, the only prayers were offered are those offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose reputation is spread far and wide. Dhruva Maharaj wanted to have the kingdom of his father, but his father refused even to allow him to get on his lap. In order to fulfill his desire, the Lord had already created a planet known as the pole star of this very famous planet. You can see it at night. Dhruva Maharaj, which was never to be annihilated even at the time of dissolution of the universe. Dhruva Maharaj attained this perfection not by acting hastily, but by patiently executing the order of his spiritual master, and therefore he became so successful that he saw the Lord face to face. Now he was further enabled by the causeless mercy of the Lord to offer fitting prayers to the Lord. To glorify or offer prayers unto the Supreme, one needs the Lord's mercy. One cannot write to glorify the Lord unless one is endowed with his causeless mercy. Okay, yeah. So therefore, just mundane poetry or mundane philosophy, they have not much, let's say, relevance for a devotee. But sincere knowledge of the devotee, of Krishna by the devotee, is the blessed, let's say, realization that the devotee has by the mercy of the Lord. And it says, to glorify or offer prayers unto the Supreme, one needs the Lord's mercy. One cannot write to glorify the Lord unless one is endowed with his causeless mercy. Wow, major statement. Text number 6. Dhruva Maharaj said, my dear Lord, you are all powerful. After entering within me, you have enlivened all my sleeping senses. My hands, legs, ears, touch, sensation, life force, and especially my power of speech. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Jiva Maharaj could understand very easily the difference between his condition before and after attaining spiritual realization and seeing the Supreme Personality Godhead face to face. He can understand that his life force and activities had been sleeping. Unless one comes to the spiritual platform, his bodily limbs, mind, and other facilities within the body are understood to be sleeping. Unless one is spiritually situated, all his activities are taken as a dead man's activities or ghostly activities. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has composed a song in which he addressed himself. O living entity, get up. How long shall you sleep in the lap of Maya? Now you have the opportunity of possessing a human form of body. Now try to get up and realize yourself. The Vedas also declare, get up, get up. You have the opportunity to boon, you have the opportunity, the boon of the human form of life. Now realize yourself. You are the Vedic injunctions. Wow. Dhruva Maharaja actually experienced that upon enlightenment of his senses on the spiritual platform, he could understand the essence of Vedic instruction, that the Supreme Godhead is the Supreme Person. He is not impersonal. Dhruva Maharaja could immediately understand this fact. He was aware that for a very long time, he was practically sleeping, and he felt the impetus to glorify the Lord according to the Vedic conclusion. A mundane person cannot offer any prayer or glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he has no realization of the Vedic conclusion. When Dhruva Maharaj therefore found this difference within himself, he could immediately understand that it was because of the causeless mercy of the Lord. He offered obeisances to the Lord with great respect and reverence, completely understanding that the Lord's favor was upon him. His spiritual enlightenment of Dhruva Maharaj's senses and mind was due to the action of the internal potency of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, the word swadhamma means by spiritual energy. Spiritual enlightenment is possible by the mercy of the supreme energy of the Lord. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra first addressed to the spiritual energy of the Lord Hare. Let me Spiritual enlightenment is possible by the mercy of the spiritual energy of the Lord. The chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is first addressed to the spiritual energy of the Lord. Hare, that's Srimati Radharani. This spiritual energy acts when a living entity fully surrenders and accepts his position as an eternal servitor. When a person places himself at the disposal or order of the Supreme Lord, that is called Sevon Mukha. At that time, the spiritual energy gradually reveals the Lord to him. Without revelation by the spiritual energy, one is unable to offer prayers glorifying the Lord. Any amount of philosophical speculation or poetic expression by mundane persons is still considered to be the action and reaction of the material energy. When one is actually enlivened by the spiritual energy, all his senses become purified and he engages only in the service of the Lord. At that time, his hands, legs, ears, tongue, mind, genital, everything engage in the service of the Lord. Such an enlightened devotee no longer has any material activities, nor has he any interest in being materially engaged. This process of purifying the senses and engaging them in the service of the Lord is known as bhakti, or devotional service. In the beginning, the senses are engaged by the direction of the spiritual master and Shastra. And after realization, when the same senses are purified, the engagement continues. The difference is that in the beginning, the senses are engaged in a mechanical way, but after realization, they are engaged in spiritual understanding. That's a very significant statement. It's showing that in the beginning, we may be engaged in a mechanical way of chanting the holy names of the Lord, but eventually we can be purified and begin after realization by the purification, we can be engaged in spiritual understanding. Okay, so there's material understanding and there's spiritual understanding. Spiritual understanding means that for the devotee, there's only Krishna. Krishna is the sum total of everything. Therefore, the devotee doesn't need to, let's say, do anything else but chant Hare Krishna, which is glorifying the Lord, and engage always in the personal service to the Lord, or bhakti yoga. Okay, text number 7. My Lord, you are the Supreme One, but by your different energies, you appear differently in the spiritual and material worlds. You create the total energy of the material world by your external potency. And after creation, you enter within the material world as the supersoul. You are the supreme person, and through the temporary modes of material nature, you create varieties of manifestation, just as fire entering into the wood of different shapes burns brilliantly in different varieties. Okay, it's very nice poetic explanation of what happens when someone becomes actually genuinely Krishna conscious. just as fire entering into wood of different shapes burns brilliantly in different varieties. Haribol. Dhruva Maharaj, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhruva Maharaja realized that the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, acts through his different energies, not that he becomes void or impersonal, and thus becomes all pervading. I mean, he can act through his devotees. The Mayavadi philosopher thinks that the absolute truth being spread throughout the cosmic manifestation has no personal form. But here, Dhruva Maharaja, upon realization of the Vedic conclusion, says, you are spread all over the cosmic manifestation by your energy. This energy is basically spiritual, but because it acts in the material world temporarily, it is called Maya, or illusory energy. In other words, for everyone but the devotees, the Lord's energy acts as external energy. Jiva Maharaj could understand this fact very nicely, and he could understand also that the energy and the energetic are one and the same. So there's Krishna's energy, and there's Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead, or the energetic. The energy cannot be separated from the energetic. Mm-hmm. This is what Mayavadis want to do. They want to separate the energetic from the energy and just exploit the energy for their own purposes and ignore the energetic or Krishna. The identity of the Supreme Personality Godhead is the feature of Paramatma or Supersoul. Is admitted herein. His original spiritual energy enlivens the material energy, and thus the dead body appears to have life force. Voidist philosophers think that under certain material conditions, the symptoms of life occur in the material body. But the fact is, so in other words, this consciousness of living entity is a combination of material energy, which is completely wrong. Yeah, it says that voidist philosophers think that under certain material conditions, the symptoms of life occur in the material body. But the fact is that the material body cannot act on its own. Even a machine needs separate energy, electricity, steam, etc. It is stated in this verse that the material energy acts in varieties of material bodies, just as fire burns differently in different wood, according to the size and quality of the wood. In the case of devotees, the same energy is transformed into spiritual energy. This is possible because the energy is originally spiritual, not material. As it is said, Vishnu Shakti Para Prukta, the original energy inspires a devotee. And thus, he engages all his bodily limbs in the service of the Lord. The same energy as external energy engages the ordinary non-devotees in material activities for sense gratification. We should mark the difference between Maya and Swadharma. For devotees, the Swadharma acts, whereas in the case of the non-devotees, the Maya energy acts. Wow. Well, when the Maya energy acts, we become attached to sense gratification. But that same energy can be purified, and now we only use our mind and senses in glorifying the Lord and serving the Lord. Okay. Text number 8. Oh, my master, Lord Brahma, in fully surrendered. Lord Brahma, let's see. Oh, master, oh, my master, Lord Brahma is fully surrendered unto you. In the beginning, you gave him knowledge, and thus he could see and understand the entire universe, just as a person awakens from sleep and visualizes his immediate duties. You are the only shelter of all persons who desire liberation, and you are the friend of all who are distressed. How, therefore, can a learned person who has perfect knowledge ever forget you? Purport by the Supreme Personality, purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be forgotten even for a moment by his surrendered devotees. The devotee understands that the Lord's causeless mercy is beyond his estimation. He cannot know how much he is benefited by the grace of the Lord. The more a devotee engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, the more encouragement is supplied by the energy of the Lord. And that's a very nice statement. Very, very nice statement. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that to those who are constantly engaged in devotional service with love and affection, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives intelligence from within. And thus, they may make further progress. Being so encouraged, the devotee can never forget at any moment the personality of Godhead. Very nice. He always feels obliged to him for having achieved increased power in devotional service by his grace. Saintly persons like Sanaka, Sanatana, and Lord Brahma were able to see the entire universe by the mercy of the Lord through knowledge of the Lord. The example is given that a person may apparently abstain from sleep all day. But as long as he is not spiritually enlightened, he is actually sleeping. He may sleep at night and perform his duties in the daytime, but as long as he does not come to the platform of working in spiritual enlightenment, he is considered to be always sleeping. A devotee, therefore, never forgets the benefit derived from the Lord. Yeah, you can, by engaging in devotional service, your spiritual life is always, let's say, active. And whereas a person who is sleeping, that means they're not engaging in any spiritual activities. A devotee, therefore, never forgets the benefit derived from the Lord. The Lord is addressed here as Artha Bandhu, which means friend of the distressed. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births of executing severe austerities in search of knowledge, one comes to the point of real knowledge and becomes wise when one surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Mayavadi philosopher who does not surrender unto the Supreme Person is understood to be lacking in real knowledge. The devotee in perfect knowledge cannot forget his obligation to the Lord at any moment. Wow, that means he is Krishna conscious at every moment of his life. Text 9. Persons who worship you simply for the sense gratification of his bag of skin are certainly influenced by your illusory energy, in spite of having you, who are like a desire tree and are the cause of liberation from birth and death, foolish persons such as me desire benedictions from you for sense gratification, which is available even for those who live in hellish conditions. Wow. So, yes, there are people that worship the Lord for sense gratification. And that means that they are still under the illusory energy. They're acting under the illusory energy. Jiva Maharaj repented because he had come to the Lord to render devotional service for material profit. He here condemns this attitude. Yeah, well, he was not permitted by his stepmother to sit on the lap of Krishna, sit on the lap of the Lord.
Father.
Oh, father, I'm sorry, sit on the lap of his father. And because of that, he became very upset. Dhruva Maharaj repented because he had come to the Lord to render devotional service for material profit. He here condemns his attitude. Only due to gross lack of knowledge does one worship the Lord for material profit or for sense gratification. The Lord is like a desire tree. Anyone can have whatever he desires from the Lord, but people in general do not know what kind of benediction they should ask from the Lord. Happiness derived from the touch of skin or sensuous happiness is present in the life of hogs and dogs. Such happiness is very insignificant. If a devotee worships the Lord for such insignificant happiness, he must be considered devoid of all knowledge. So it's very nice. And it says, happiness derived from the touch of skin or sensuous happiness. That's referring to sense gratification that a man has with a woman. Uh, it says the same thing is present in the life of hogs and dogs. Such happiness is very insignificant. If a devotee worships the Lord for such insignificant happiness, he must be considered devoid of all knowledge. Haribol. Text number 10. My Lord, the transcendental bliss derived from meditating upon your lotus feet or hearing about your glories from pure devotees is so unlimited that it is far beyond the stage of Brahmananda, wherein one thinks himself merged in the impersonal Brahman as one with the Supreme. Since Brahmananda is also defeated by the transcendental bliss derived from devotional service, then what to speak of the temporary blissfulness of elevating oneself to the heavenly planets, which is ended by the separating sword of time. Although one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, he falls down in due course of time. Yeah, because uh, anything in the material world is going to be temporary. So one may achieve a position on the higher planets of the material world and think that he has achieved the highest level of spiritual achievement. but it's actually false. And one will fall down. So that's why it says, although one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, he falls down in due course of time. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The transcendental bliss derived from devotional service, primarily from Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. In other words, you hear about Krishna and you chant or repeat what you heard by chanting. So that's the way you learn. You hear and then you repeat. And gradually you'll be able to memorize things. And always, so that's the mundane act of hearing and repeating. The transcendental way of hearing and chanting here, and when it refers to Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, cannot be compared to the happiness derived by karmis by elevating themselves to the heavenly planets, or by the jnanis or yogis who enjoy oneness with the supreme personal, impersonal Brahman. Yogis generally meditate upon the transcendental form of Vishnu, but devotees not only meditate upon him, but actually engage in the direct service of the Lord. In the previous verse, we find the phrase Bhava Pyaya. Bhava Pyaya. Okay, Bhava Pyaya, which refers to birth and death. The Lord can give relief from the chain of birth and death. It is a misunderstanding to think, as do the monists, that when one gets relief from the process of birth and death, he merges into the Supreme Brahman. Here it is clearly said that the transcendental bliss derived from Shravanam Kirtanam by pure devotees cannot be compared to Brahmananda, or the impersonal conception of transcendental bliss derived by merging into the absolute. The position of karmis is still more degraded. Their aim is to elevate themselves to the higher planetary systems. It is says, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Persons who worship the demigods are elevated to the heavenly planets. Bhagavad Gita 9:25. But elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita 9:21, we find Shine Punye Martyalokam Vishanti. Those who are elevated to the higher planetary systems must come down again as soon as the results of their pious activities are exhausted. They are like the modern astronauts who go to the moon as soon as their fuel is used up, they are obliged to come back down to this earth. As the modern astronauts who go to the moon or other heavenly planets by force of jet propulsion have to come down again after exhausting their fuel, so also do those who are elevated to the heavenly planets by force of yajnas and pious activities. Antakasi lu itat, by the sword of time, one is cut from his exalted position within this material world, and he comes down again. Dhruva Maharaj appreciated that the results of devotional service are far more valuable than merging into the absolute or being elevated to the heavenly planets. The words Patatam Vimanat are very significant. Vimana means airplane. Those who are elevated to the heavenly planets are like airplanes, which drop when they run out of fuel. Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. I like that. Those who are elevated to heavenly planets are like airplanes, which drop when they run out of fuel. Haribol. Text number 11. Jiva Maharaj continued, O unlimited Lord, kindly bless me so that I may associate with great devotees who engage in your transcendental loving service constantly. As the waves of a river constantly flow, such transcendental devotees are completely situated in an uncontaminated state of life. I like that, uncontaminated state of life. By the process of devotional service, I shall surely be able to cross the nascent ocean of material existence, which is filled with the waves of blazing fire-like dangers. It will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are eternally existent. Okay, it's very significant statements here. Giving an idea, giving, let's say, an explanation of the ecstasies experienced by a pure devotee. Purport: the significant point in Dhruva Maharaj's statement is that he wanted the association of pure devotees. Transcendental devotional service cannot be complete and cannot be relishable without the association of devotees. We have therefore established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Anyone who is trying to be aloof from this Krishna Consciousness Society and yet engage in Krishna consciousness is living in a great hallucination. For this is not possible. So it's not possible to really be Krishna conscious by avoiding the association of devotees. From this statement by Dhruva Maharaj, it is clear that unless one is associated with devotees, his devotional service does not mature. It does not become distinct from material activities. The Lord says, Satam prasangam mamavirya samido bhavanti hitkarna rasayana. Bhagavatam 3:25.25. Only in the association of pure devotees can the words of Lord Krishna be fully potent and relishable to the heart and ear. Dhruva Maharaja explicitly wanted the association of devotees. That association in devotional activities is just like the waves of an incessantly flowing river. In our Krishna Consciousness Society, we have full engagement 24 hours a day. Every moment of our time is always busily engaged in the service of the Lord. This is called the incessant flow of devotional service. A Mayavadi philosopher may question us. You may be very happy in the association of devotees, but what is your plan for crossing the ocean of material existence? Dhruva Maharaja's answer is that it is not very difficult. He clearly says that this ocean can be crossed very easily if one simply becomes mad. Not, that doesn't mean angry, but it means full of, let's say, determination to serve Krishna. When one simply becomes mad to hear the glories of the Lord. Bhavad Guna Kata. For anyone who persistently engages in hearing the topics of the Lord from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and who is actually addicted to this process. Just as one becomes addicted to intoxicants, it is very easy to cross the nescience or ignorance of material existence. The ocean of material ignorance is compared to a blazing fire, but to a devotee, this blazing fire is insignificant because he is completely absorbed in devotional service. Although the material world is blazing fire, to a devotee it appears full of pleasure. Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. The purport of this statement by Dhruva Maharaj is that devotional service in the association of devotees is the cause of the development of further devotional service. By devotional service only is one elevated to the transcendental planet Goloka Vrindavana, and there also there is only devotional service for the activities of devotional service. One second. One is elevated to the transcendental planet Goloka Vrindavana, and there also there is only devotional service. For the activities of devotional service, both in this world and in the spiritual world, are one and the same. Very nice statement. Devotional service does not change. The example of a mango can be given here. If one gets an unripe mango, it is still a mango. And when it is ripe, it remains the same mango, but it has become more tasteful and relishable. This is a nice example. Similarly, there is devotional service performed according to the direction of the spiritual master and the injunctions and regulative principles of Shastra. And there is devotional service in the spiritual world, rendered directly in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they are both the same. There is no change. The difference is that one stage is unripe and the other is ripe and more relishable. It is impossible to mature in devotional service only in this. It is possible to mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. That's why the association of devotees is so important. It's the only way that we can make spiritual advancement or become mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. So a devotee never really engages in activities with mundane people. He always keeps the association of devotees and avoids the association of non-devotees. O Lord, who have a lotus navel, if a person happens to associate with a devotee whose heart always hankers after your lotus feet, seeking always their fragrance, he is never attached to the material body or in a bodily relationship to offspring, friends, home, wealth, and wife, which are very, very dear to materialistic persons. Indeed, he does not care for them. So whenever a big personality gets caught engaged in illicit sex and different types of cheating and so forth, immediately he says, the most important thing for me is family. And they do a mea culpa. Look that up. Mea culpa. And they feel very sorry that they engaged in sense gratification or sex with other ladies, ignoring their own family. What does it say? Mea culpa. MIA
My
culpas.
fault.
Yeah,
It's my fault, basically. Mea culpa.
yeah.
And
And they begin to say, "Oh, it's
apology, basically, it's an apology.
yeah, right, yeah," because he cheated on his wife, so he's apologizing. But a wife who's always been faithful to her husband is really upset when they find out that the husband is cheating and engaging with other women. Sometimes women can forgive their husband that does that, but there are other women that will never forgive and really uh, cannot get it out of their mind that the husband uh, cheated and went with other women and had illicit sex. The difference is that one stage is unripe and the other is ripe and more relishable. It is possible to mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. So if you want to make spiritual advancement, you have to have the association of devotees. Because here it says that there is no, the difference is that one stage is unripe and the other is ripe and more relishable. It is possible to mature in devotional service only in the association of devotees. Well, so you have to give up the association of non-devotees in order to make spiritual advancements. Text number 12. Oh, let's see, our time is almost finished. We'll just do this one verse. Text number 12. Oh Lord, who have a lotus navel, if a person happens to associate with a devotee whose heart always hankers after your lotus feet, seeking always their fragrance, he is never attached to the material body or in a bodily relationship to offspring, friends, home, wealth, and wife, which are very, very dear to materialistic persons. Indeed, he does not care for them. Well, purport by Srila Prabhupada. A special advantage in devotional service is that devotees not only enjoy the transcendental pastimes of the Lord by hearing and chanting and glorifying, but also are not very much attached to their bodies, unlike the yogis who are too attached to the body and who think that by performing bodily gymnastic exercises, they will advance in spiritual consciousness. Yogis are generally not very much interested in devotional service. They want to regulate the breathing process. This is simply a bodily concern. Here, Dhruva Maharaja plainly says that a devotee has no more bodily interest. He knows that he is not the body from the very beginning. Therefore, without wasting time in bodily exercises, a devotee searches out a pure devotee and simply by his association becomes more advanced in spiritual consciousness than any yogi. Because a devotee knows that he is not the body, he is never affected by bodily happiness or distress. He is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which come from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. Haribol. So the devotee is not interested in mundane activities, let's put it like that. Uh, Going to Disneyland, seeing Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Yeah, going to India and seeing the places of pastimes of the Lord, that's different. But going to Disneyland, that's not the same. It's a waste of time. And actually, it's sinful because instead of meditating on Krishna, the kids are meditating on Donald Duck. Okay. Okay, we'll stop there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Any questions?
Any questions online? So his Dhruv Maharaj is also requesting the association of devotees. But he's given this Dhruvaloka, which is all by himself, isn't it? Maharaj? Or is it
No, he has people in
people
that.
in
Yeah,
Himalayas? Okay, so,
yeah, you can attain Drupaloka.
hmm.
It's a spirit. It's a spiritual planet in the material world.
Yes.
And when there's material destruction, that Drupaloka planet is not destroyed. It's eternal.
It's still in the material world, right, Maharaj?
Yes.
Even it's still in the material world, but during the annihilation, it will not, nothing will happen.
Yes. Good place to be in.
Really, the whole universe rotates around that pole star. It's
Yes.
what even the modern science agrees with that. The whole thing there is an axis based on the pole star.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, our takeaway today. Because a devotee knows that he is not the body, he is never affected by bodily happiness or distress. He is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which come from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. Wow, really wonderful statement. Yeah, so when a person, let's say there's a man and he finds out that his wife is cheating on him and having sex with another man. Right? So usually uh, the husband becomes really angry and sometimes he kills his wife or he kills the so-called lover of his wife. But a devotee doesn't get upset. He can, uh, forgive his wife. I know someone who was cheating, and uh, the well, the wife was cheating on him, or the husband was cheating on the wife, but the wife forgave her husband. Right? And then sometimes it's the opposite. Uh, the husband, the husband forgives his wife for engaging in illicit sex with someone else. However, um, the whole, let's say, uh, the whole concept uh, of being interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which comes from these things, is not something that affects the devotee. And that's why it says this is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. So, the devotee who is associating with more advanced devotees than himself loses the taste for mundane pleasures with family members and desires only to be with genuine devotees who are always engaged in devotional service. Now, sometimes that is considered callous behavior. Family members think that, oh, these Hare Krishna people have taken our daddy away from us or taken our mommy away from us. But a person who becomes Krishna conscious, it's not that they reject their family members, but they reject mundane behavior with the family members. Right? They will always accept the association of family members in Krishna consciousness, but they reject the sense gratification that family members might be engaged in. So the family members might think, oh, well, he's gone against his family. But actually, he's trying to give an example to his family to stop engaging in sense gratification and get interested in Krishna consciousness. And that's why Prabhupada says here, he is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which come from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. Well, some people claim that, that their son or daughter has been brain damaged by associating with devotees and not wanting to be engaged in the mundane activities of family life. However, the devotee is not calloused. He doesn't, let's say, reject his family members, but he doesn't engage in the sense gratification that family members are engaged in. He tries to help them make spiritual advancement. And if they reject him, then he understands that no one is a sadhu in the eyes of his family members. And they always say, well, I remember before when you were not a devotee, you were drinking, you were doing this, you were doing that. So it's always difficult to convince your family members that you have completely given up all those bad habits and now have become a genuine devotee. However, the devotee is not intimidated by the plea of the family members that, oh, well, before you were drinking alcohol and you were doing this and you were doing that. We remember all this. Yeah, but the devotee has gone past the, let's say, concept of being a karmi. And he never again engages in mundane sense gratification. That is the symptom of a genuine devotee. That's why it says here, because the devotee knows that he is not the body, he is never affected by bodily happiness or distress. He is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which come from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a person is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. So you don't have to leave home and family and so forth, but you no longer have a mundane relationship with the family. Therefore, it says he is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance. Okay, so what is he interested in? He's interested in not body to body relationship, but soul to soul relationship. There's a big difference between the two. And if the family members don't want to reciprocate in soul to soul relationship, then there's nothing wrong with leaving that association. So here it says, he, meaning the devotee, is not interested in bodily relationships. Yes, that's the whole point. He's interested in soul, spiritual relationships, but not bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which comes from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a devotee is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. So, association of pure devotees is the ultimate way to have a spiritual life. You can't be in the middle, sometimes associating with devotees, sometimes engaging in mundane activities. That will not really help you make spiritual advancement. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Yeah, you don't want to be a half and half. Half times devotee, half times nonsense. Just like they have, the half and half milk. You want to be pure milk. Okay, thank you very much. And have a very good day today. It looks like it's a nice day today.
Yes, sunny, bright. Haribol.
Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hare Hare.
So our takeaway today is the following. Because a devotee knows that he is not the body, he is never affected by bodily happiness or distress. He is not interested in bodily relationships with wife, children, home, bank balance, etc., or in the distress and happiness which come from these things. This is the special advantage of being a devotee. This status of life is possible only when a devotee is interested in associating with a pure devotee who always enjoys the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord. Haribol. So we should always have good association of good devotees. Haribol.
Hare